Hello, welcome to 21 This Week. I'm Susan Heltemes. Coming up next, Rockville Town Center Booster Committee formed. Elrich to county unions, thank you. Hogan on the move, and the Mueller report. We're joined today by an astute panel of political insiders. Former Rockville Mayor Susan Hoffmann, Evan Young, Marilyn Young, Republican National Committeeman, Joel Rubin, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for the Obama administration, and former Democratic Majority Leader John Hurson. Stay tuned for these topics and more. Rockville Town Square is a 12.5-acre transit-oriented redevelopment that was designed to replace a failed shopping mall with a vibrant civic, retail, and residential core. Things are not going as planned, however. Susan, Rockville Economic Development, Inc. formed a work group of mostly owners of commercial and residential properties to study the issue. If you were still mayor of Rockville, would you have taken the same approach to study the issue?
I think there's a fundamental thing that everyone needs to understand, which is that when Town Center was built, and I was there for that one before I was mayor, and then on the council, and as mayor, we could have gone higher. We could have had a larger residential component, and I lost that fight, and so there aren't enough residents in Town Center to support the businesses.
Everything else.
That's part of the problem. The other issue about the committee that you're talking about, I think it's very important to include businesses, to include the property owners, but it does need to have residents as well, and I hope that's a good mix.
Okay, so Evan, is it possible that Montgomery County has too many town centers and could spell the doom for more of these idealized little hubs all over the county?
I don't think so. I'm going to go a little bit different way. I agree with what you're saying, but also we see most of the businesses that get shut down in these town centers. There's not too many of them. There's only 5 or 6 throughout the county, but most often it is these restaurants that are closing down. 60% of restaurants fail in the first 3 years, and they work on very small, on average 3 to 5% margins. So we see a lot of restaurants, but we see a lot of the same types of restaurants. In order to be sustainable and not be in that 60%, you have to have something unique. You have to have something that can bring in more residents, bring in more customers, especially when they don't live right nearby, that elevates you and draws people out from their houses, draws people out from the fast food restaurants, and lets you still maintain your business, compete with the high rent prices, the taxes that are required. So we need more residents living nearby, and business owners, they can't do anything about that.
But you
they can't
need
do
niche
anything.
Restaurants and stores.
They can't decide the rent prices. They can't decide if there's residential communities nearby. But what they can decide is how they operate their business and what they bring, what kind of restaurant they create, and that's something we need to see more of.
Maybe
also.
The Barnes & Noble closing on the Pike could move to downtown Rockville.
No,
in
it's
the town
moving
center.
across the street into Congressional.
Is it really?
Which is also a federal realty property, but
it is moving.
It's not coming closer to Rockville.
Oh, well, let's move on. It's no secret that county employee unions wanted Marc Elrich for exec. As a former teacher, Marc espoused all that is good and just and fair to unions. And this week, it all paid off for them. Joel, in a year of budget constraints and with an economic downfall on the horizon, Elrich has proposed an increase of up to 10% for employees who had agreed to forego raises in the past due to a bad economy and were promised raises when things were better. And no money is also going to be put into the retirement health fund next year. Did Elrich make the right decision? And if not, when are these employees going to get their pay?
Yeah, Susan, the number one thing that we have going for us in the county is our strong county government and the kinds of people that work in it. It is the biggest magnet for families moving to the county. I have 3 daughters, for example. They're in the public schools. We benefit from the services. And the mandate that Marc Elrich had was predicated upon the idea of strengthening our county. So having this demand made whole is totally appropriate. We need to make sure that the county employees stay active, stay strong, and are continuing to serve the public. There is a concern, though, of course, which is that our economic development does need a shot in the arm. We need to ensure that we're attracting businesses here. So in this investment in the county employees, we're going to have to make sure we have a little more creative economic activities going forward.
Okay, and welcome for the first time, Joel.
Thanks.
I'm glad you're here. John, on top of these raises, you know teachers are also going to seek higher pay. Is this sustainable, and will the county council concur at this time when we all know taxpayers want no more additional tax burden?
You know, I'd like to, let's pull the lens back just a little bit on this for a second. I mean, the last election for county executive and for the council was very much focused on a business versus, you know, progressive kind of debate. And this is kind of very quickly moving into questions and how that's going to be decided. And the fact that the county executive decided to move forward with these raises now, and we're looking at a teacher's contract coming up as well, what are we going to do there? I think we all ought to take a deep breath, and that includes the council members, and start thinking about what kind of message we're sending to the entire county, people who live here, obviously, who expect good services, but also people who want to invest here and bring new businesses here. I think this is a really pivotal moment because it is very soon in the 4-year term that we're already talking about making raises, and that we haven't even seen the teacher's contract.
Well, and there are those who say he always, all along, wanted to raise taxes, and that's what the council has stressed this week. You know, they don't want to raise taxes, so this is going to be fun to watch. Okay, next, Governor Hogan had a busy week. Boy, did he ever. On Tuesday, he was outside the Supreme Court with former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger during the Maryland redistricting hearing, and on Thursday, he hosted former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie for cocktails at Government House, and then he helped him sell his book at the Yacht Club. Evan, why are these governors spending time with their buddy Larry Hogan?
Well, you sort of answered the question in your question there yourself. Arnold Schwarzenegger has been in favor of fair, nonpartisan redistricting long before Larry Hogan was governor. When he was governor of California in the early 2000s, he was out in D.C. pushing for this. That didn't change just because Larry Hogan's governor now. I don't know if they're buddies or not, but I know that they're allies on this one issue. And when it comes to Governor Christie, yeah, they are buddies. And he was an early supporter of Hogan, and Chris Christie, like most people who have left office, decided to write a book and make some money. And so the buddy is returning the favor, I guess, of supporting him early on, invited him down to Maryland and hosted an event together.
Is it helpful for Hogan to be seen with these, you know, like stars of the Republican Party? If in, you know,
I love Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's been my hero since I could first pronounce the name, but I don't know if he's
try
actually
spelling it.
So that was last week?
Yeah. But I don't know if he's necessarily a hero of the Republican Party anymore. He's been pretty critical of Trump.
He sounds like a Democrat most often.
So he's
He was in the
I
Kennedy.
think, in fact,
he's with Hogan on this issue. I don't know if it hurts him. I don't think anyone can be hurt by being seen with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I think Schwarzenegger is known for not being a supporter of Trump. So
Yeah.
being with Hogan, I think, sends a message.
Wow. Well, John, Hogan later last week, on top of all this, he vetoed the $15 an hour wage. He vetoed the transfer of authority, which was very controversial, from Comptroller Francho to a commission that oversees alcohol and tobacco enforcement, and a bill that returned authority to the school districts for determining dates for their school terms, something that Hogan, you know, did by executive fiat. Now, all have been overturned by the legislature. What does all of this really mean for Hogan, for the state, for the legislature?
Well, I mean, I think it's the continuing dance that Larry Hogan does, where he tries to be very bipartisan on a bunch of different bills, but then on some ones that are kind of significant Democratic initiatives, particularly the wage increase, the minimum wage increase, he vetoes it. So he keeps all his Republicans happy. So he continues this dance of doing, yes, I work with the leadership on many, many bills, but then when the big ones come up, he vetoes them, knowing they're going to be overridden anyway.
And
So
if he were
it's
to
a
run
dance.
for president, that looks good that he vetoes.
I think he has to keep his Republicans happy, and, and this is how he's doing it, I think.
But, and he is definitely Francho's best friend, so that's why he vetoed that one and it went back. Okay, we're going to be right back after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Last Friday, there was an audible sigh in the metro area as the Mueller report was dumped. We now know that it is more than 300 pages and less than 1,000 in length. On Sunday, Attorney General Barr released a 4-page Cliff Note summary with just a few words from the report. John, the House voted unanimously to have the full report released to the public, but a similar vote was blocked in the Senate. President Trump claims total vindication, no collusion on his part, and is harsher than ever with his vitriol towards the press and Democrats. Help us put this week in perspective. Easy task, John.
The really funny part is, I think this week is going to be just like next week and the week after that, and we're going to be talking about the Mueller report until December. The reality is now that Barr is going to release the full report, redacted, for grand jury testimony and things like that. I think that's going to quell some of the, the Democrat versus Republican and the Republican cheering that, everything's great for Trump. But the bottom line is going to be a lot of stuff in there.
But what about Trump?
I think there's going to be a lot of information that is going to keep this thing very much alive. And you've got the Southern District of New York is still doing investigations. It's not over, and it's going to continue. It's not like you can say, the no collusion thing, or conspiracy rather. No conspiracy is that seems to kind of be settled, but it hasn't changed the fact that Congress is going to be looking into how close, Trump has been with Russia and how that may have influenced things. I honestly don't think I would say we're not even halfway to the end of this entire thing. So.
And the stress level continues to mount. Joel, the Nixon and Clinton reports were quickly released to Congress and the public, and today the Congress was told the report will be released to the judicial committees in mid-April, and AG Barr will appear before the Senate on May 1st, the House on May 2nd. Mueller is supposedly working with Barr to redact classified information, and Congressman Nadler already today responded that he's not satisfied with anything but the full report next week. There has always been concern that the ongoing actions of the administration that routinely ignore our separate but equal branches of government will leave Congress and the public with less than a satisfactory result regarding the report. Is it possible that there could be a constitutional crisis looming?
Well, we're certainly in the midst of a national security crisis, and that is that this report was about Russia's invasion of our democracy, and the president has not said a word about it, nor was he exonerated from obstruction of justice. So we're at the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end, and obstruction is what caused the previous impeachments. So the president's not off the hook by any stretch, and if this report, when it is finally released, again, we didn't even have cliff notes, we had a cover letter from the Attorney General. When it's released, we'll see, because there could very well be impeachment proceedings based upon the political national security ramifications of Trump's behavior.
Can I mention one other thing that I think is really important, and it's important in the next 2 weeks? Barr has said he's releasing it and that he's the one who's going to decide, or has decided, what can be kept confidential on executive privilege, because the president has come out publicly and said, I want the whole thing released. And Barr has said, well, since he said that, then I'll be the one that decides if there's anything executive privilege. I have a feeling that that is going to be retracted in the next 2 weeks, where the White House counsel says, wait a minute, we didn't agree to never look at this and re-examine executive privilege. There's going to be a fight between Barr and the White House.
And at that point, Jerry Nadler will subpoena the entire report, because there is no executive privilege over things that happened when he was not the president.
And there's a lot of, I can only imagine the behavior of the president in the next few weeks if the stress gets even worse. I mean, we all see it. Okay, so Susan, if indeed the report vindicates Trump as intimated by Barr's summary, why did Trump, during the best week, what should have been the best week of his presidency, go off track, seeking to oppose Obamacare in the courts that would leave 21 million people without health care, while zero funding Meals on Wheels, NPR, Special Olympics, and cutting funding for food stamps, Medicaid, Puerto Rico, and almost every foreign aid that helps humanity, food, AIDS prevention, and more? What's the answer, Susan?
Because Donald Trump is the gift that keeps on giving. He is the Democrats' best friend. He had one of his better weeks in the in this year, in 2019, and then he decided to step in it up to his hips. And now, suddenly, Obamacare, the ACA, is back on the table. It has united all of the Democrats who were starting to wiggle off the center and go their separate ways. This has brought them all back to the magnet and all back to Nancy Pelosi. They're speaking with one voice, with one message, and it's going to be all about health care and pre-existing conditions, and there is no alternate plan. He says there is, but he says a lot of stuff that we know is not true.
Well, what's interesting is Kevin McCarthy told him not to do this stuff. And when Kevin McCarthy advises you not to do something, you know,
A.G. Barr advised him not to do it.
right.
And Mitch McConnell said, okay, I'm walking back. Let's see what Speaker Pelosi and the president come up with.
now that will be quite the gift to the nation. If they
Not
can work-
holding my breath.
Yeah, okay, so Evan, you're going to get it. You might think that Trump's constant lies, the indictments and jailing of numerous confidants and colleagues, his continual disrespect of the law, and ongoing investigations into every aspect of his life would totally erode the trust of the American electorate in the president. But it hasn't. Bottom line, can Teflon Don be re-elected?
So from your question, am I to assume you're undecided on your vote for 2020? Yeah.
Well, we've got 2 years. So what I
So
want,
there's still a chance you can come around.
yeah. So, okay. So what?
Good one, Evan.
I mean, all those things have been proven over and over. All those things are true. Can he get nominated by the party and reelected?
Nominated, absolutely. His approval ratings are consistently around 90%, the lowest I've
With
ever.
Republicans,
But
yeah.
those are who's voting for a presidential nomination.
But there is
so.
some erosion, I think.
Yeah, so if he gets 10% voting for someone else, he's still the nominee. So,
Yeah.
and I don't think anyone who wants a political future in the party is going to try to primary President Trump. Now, had this report come out and said definitively something way different, that's when I think maybe Governor Hogan jumps in more, or John Kasich or some of these others jump in. But as it stands now, any Republican that wants a future, they're waiting another 4
But
years.
you know, I mean, the middle of April though is not that far away, and I mean, you know, I don't know if he got the good sense.
I think if anyone was actually in our party planning on primarying him and actually planning on doing so seriously, would have heard something.
Governor
They have to
Wells.
be putting something to.
Governor
But I said
Wells.
seriously.
Oh, okay.
But I do think that he is in jeopardy on the national election in the fall, and that is because his positions, including health care, are running directly against what most Americans want.
But let me-
and this will put the Republican debate stage into a very interesting place if someone like Kasich or the governor runs against him.
Okay,
I
so
don't
John?
think there's going to be a challenge to Trump. I just don't see a primary coming.
Unless something comes up.
something
Well,
really big,
it
and
would
I
have
think
to-
it
yeah,
would have
and-
to be really big. And the other thing I think is, hey, wait for the Democrats to shoot themselves in the foot. I mean
We have
that
lots
is
of
the
guns
we
shooting
have
this
lots
year.
of guns available and lots of people out there making statements that scare the American public.
2
Frankly,
to
to
3
be-
weeks ago, they were
Yeah.
playing firing squad with their
Yeah,
toes.
and
There's
and
no
we-
question about
we
it.
haven't
It's
even
go-
And
it's
that
gonna
was
be
the
messy.
point. That
It's
was the
gonna be
point I
messy.
was
even
making.
started yet.
I mean, the poster boy of the party is
Trump-
skateboards and eats dirt. So
Yeah.
on your
Well,
side,
it's going
so.
to be messy, but there's
Who's
a
that?
lot
Beto.
of
Oh well, except
Climbs on
you
things
know
and
what?
eats dirt. So.
Governor
He's not the poster
Buttigieg,
boy of the party.
is climbing ahead. He's the guy. I think
But
that-
we've
But
got
there's a
long
lot.
time.
There's a
There's a
lot
lot
of
of people
similarity on
coming and
policy
going.
positions. This is very personality driven. What's going to happen in the
That's
Democratic
right.
primary?
It's very early. We've all been around long enough to know what this is like.
But Evan, what I want to know is, does not all of those things I talked about? I mean, you know he's lying. You know he skirts the law. Every part of his being, his existence, is being investigated by the Southern District of New York. Does it give you and other Republicans pause that your party voted in Phoenix a couple of months ago that we're going to support him and we may not even have primaries? Does it now give you pause, as the noose does in essence get a little tighter, about this going gaga, falling all over him, saying, "We're with you, man"? I mean, you're on the inside.
I mean, that's pretty much what Democrat Party did for Hillary when she wasn't the incumbent. So,
No, but we had primaries. The
the party wasn't neutral.
But she was not under investigation.
No, she was.
And her
she should have
business, well, that's, okay, well.
But
there
the
you go.
report came out and all the surrounding
We're gonna
documents were released to Congress.
I think we
there
need to
is-
stick
there
with the
is-
facts,
Yeah,
but whether she
but
should
that
have
still
been or
doesn't
not,
answer
she
the question.
wasn't.
And the facts are this noose that you say is tightening. Where?
I mean, my
that's-
Around his
my
neck.
question to you would be, assume for a moment that he does not win a second term. How does the Republican Party pull itself back to a place where they represent a conservative philosophy to
Yeah.
begin with, and just have generally positions
And-
that are where they used to be?
John,
is
you
that
know
going to
what?
happen?
We're going
Well-
to have to cut it up there, and that's going to be the next conversation. Like, where do we go after Trump? You're absolutely right. And on that note, we're going to be back in a second with parting shots. Welcome back. On Thursday, I went to the retirement party for Police Chief Tom Manger and was thrilled when Executive Elrich announced that the police headquarters in Gaithersburg are going to be named for Chief Manger. He ended his 42-year police career with his 15-year stint as our chief. Chief Manger was the best, and he's going to be missed. Now, with parting shots, Susan, you're first.
So my new best friend and the man I'm looking up to the most is U.S. House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff,
Amen.
who was brilliant recently in dealing with his obstreperous Republican minority in the committee. I can't go through the quote, but his quote about if we think that Mr. Trump's behavior is okay, that is the day that we have lost, that America has lost its way, will become a quote that we will all remember.
You would think, Susan, wouldn't you? Okay, Evan.
Yeah, so being the only Republican here tonight, I have the unique responsibility of being rational and living in reality. And the unfortunate reality for Orioles fans is that one day into the season, I think we might already be mathematically eliminated after winning just 47 games last year, the worst year since coming to Baltimore. Everything tells me, by looking at that opening day lineup, this year will be the worst year since coming to Baltimore. But don't worry, opening day means only 6 months away from the start of football season, and the Redskins march to the Super Bowl.
Wow. I was in Allentown 2 weeks ago. The stores were all filled with Bryce Harper gear. What can I say?
Second most overpaid player.
Joel, this is your first parting shot. It was good to have you here today.
Thank you, Susan. It was great. Thank you. And on the note of Chief Manger, who was a real leader on many issues, anti-Semitism is on the rise in the United States, and it's on the rise here in Montgomery County. We've seen a number of incidents of hate speech in my town in Chevy Chase. We had flyers handed out in front of Jewish homes that were anti-Semitic. But there's been a public debate about anti-Semitism, and recently it's about the left. That's not who's doing it. It's coming from white nationalists, it's coming from neo-Nazis, it's coming from irresponsible rhetoric, like on the House floor this past week, where a Republican member of Congress quoted from Mein Kampf and was not called out by his Republican colleagues. So we need a real conversation about anti-Semitism, and we need to stop the political pandering, attacking the left, equating anti-Semitism with anti-Israel rhetoric. That's not the truth. Here in America, it's coming from the right.
John, your last.
Bringing it a little bit home, this is the first year of a 4-year term for newly elected delegates and senators in Annapolis. They're almost done. And I just want to do a shout out to some of our Montgomery County stars down there. We have, of course, we have Kumar Barve, who's the chairman of the Environment Committee in the House. And we have, in the Senate, we have Brian Feldman, who is the vice chair of the Finance Committee, brand new position for him.
Nancy
And
King.
we have, of course, our Ways and Means Chair.
Nancy King.
Nancy King.
Not Nancy King.
Oh,
That's
Ways
Budget
and
and
Means,
Tax.
sorry.
And Kaiser.
And Ann Kaiser. That's what I was going to say. Ann Kaiser on Ways and Means. But Nancy King is the real shout out because
Sorry.
she took over the Budget and Tax Committee, and that is a really important committee and a really important position for Montgomery County. So shout out to all you new stars down there.
Thank you all very much for coming tonight. It was a great show. And I know you have to give some of your Friday night up. But anyway, thank you to the crew. Thank you to the panel and for you for joining us each week for Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show, 21 this week. We'll see you next time. I'm Susan Heltemes. Bye for now.